Praise the Lord. I trust you are doing well in the Lord today. Now, today, I have something very interesting. Some time back, about 2 months ago, I did a fast. And during that fast, I used to pray in tongues for 8 hours a day. That was the very first time I ever prayed in tongues for that long in a single day. And of course, there were lessons that I learned from that experience. Now, today, I will want to share with you some of the lessons that I learned from that particular time, so that in case you are also in a position whereby you are contemplating praying in tongues for longer than you normally do, at least some of these things will be familiar to you. Now, the first thing that you need to understand about praying in tongues for 8 hours a day or any long period of time praying in tongues is that you need to be desperate. Now, you will not just wake up one day and say you will pray in tongues for 8 hours. You will not just wake up one day and say you will pray in tongues for 6 hours. Any time that you will want to pray in tongues for longer than usual, there has to be something that is pushing you to pray that long. You see, like praying for long is a huge sacrifice. That is something that you need to know. And you are not going to take a sacrifice unless there is need for that sacrifice actually to be taken. Now, I remember at that time when I decided to do that 8 hours praying in tongues day, and actually the 8 hours themselves, I used to pray 4 hours, then take a little break of like about 30 minutes, and then I will pray the other 4 hours. So it was 4 hours, then a little break, then 4 hours. And also I was praying at night. I was not praying during the day. Reason being, there was less distraction during the day. The place where I used to live at that time, it had so much distractions and it had very noisy neighbors. And so I didn't want that noise to interfere with my praying. So that's when I chose to do the praying at night. Now, the thing that you need to understand is that at that time, my life was at a point where I was feeling discontent with my own life. I felt I was stagnating. I felt like it had been a long time before I had some form of direction from God or some direct leading from God. So at that time, normally I would pray in tongues for like an hour, or like on a daily basis, I would do like an hour. Some days I'll do like an hour and a half, but most of the time is like maximum it was just an hour and a half. So 8 hours was a huge, huge sacrifice that I was going to take. It was a stretch more than normal. Now, it was desperation that moved me to pray for 8 hours, because there was no way I was going to start praying for 8 hours if my life was going well and everything was fine with the 1 hour that I was actually doing. And usually I normally do this because there are times when, because this is something that you need to understand. When you go to God and ask for anything, basically, God has a price tag for everything that He gives to you. That is why, even for somebody like Jesus, for the salvation of men, the price tag was what? A life which needed to be pure to die on the cross. That was the price tag of the salvation of men, and Jesus paid it. So anything that you ask from God is always going to have a price tag on it. But the challenge is that sometimes you don't know the price tag. So if you don't know the price tag of what you are asking from God, then the best thing to do is just to pay as much as you can, because you can overpay for whatever you are actually seeking for, then God will give you, and then the overpayment will actually go to benefit other things in your life. So that is when I decided to just do a fast and do the like an amount of praying which I knew it will deliver what I wanted and even more. So that's when I decided to just stretch myself to the limit as much as possible. There are times when, of course, when you make a request to God, God Himself will tell you the price tag. So He may tell you to fast for a number of days, or to pray in a certain way, or to take a certain type of fast. But the times when God has not specified really the price that you need to pay for whatever you are asking for, just do your best to like pay as much as you can. Just push yourself to the limit, because any overpayment of the prayers you are making, of course, they will It will just be used for other things in your life. So that is what happened. So the thing is, you need to be very, very desperate. And you see, this desperation, it comes naturally. Because if you are the sort of person, because everybody has their own upper limits and lower limits, a limit whereby if your life goes below there, you will say, honestly, I would rather be dead than live this kind of life. More like what those four lepers from the book of Second Kings did. They were seated and they were saying, if we sit here, we will die. If we go into the city, there is what? Like there is famine in the city, we will still die. The only option we have is to go to the camp of the enemies and hope that they actually spare us. If they spare us, then that will be fine. If they kill us, well and good, because even if we stay here, we will still die. So when you are in that sort of desperate situation, naturally praying is just going to, you are just going to be very motivated to pray for a very long time in tongues. So that was the first thing that I learned. The second thing is that the tongues that I was speaking, most of them, they were feeling dry. And this is something that you need to understand. If you are going to pray for a long stretch of time, and actually I was praying exclusively, I was not doing anything else. I was exclusively praying, kneeling down praying. Sometimes I would stand up and walk around while praying. Other times I would just sit on my chair and pray. But it was praying alone. I was not doing anything else. Now, what you need to understand is that it is difficult to stay focused for for 8 straight hours while praying. That's why I actually chose to do it at night, so that it would at least aid me in being focused in that prayer. Now, the thing is that if you are going to pray for that long stretch of time, God will not only answer you because you are praying for like you are praying for all that time. Reason is, God sometimes will answer you because of the sacrifice you are actually taking. So that like the tongues themselves may feel dry. And actually this is something that I was concerned about. I had this concern of, what if I pray for all this time and take this huge sacrifice to pray for all this long, only for God not to answer and give me what I want? It was something that was concerning me, but I said, anyway, let me just do it, because that is the only thing that I know I can do to get myself out of this situation and stop feeling stuck and lost in life. So I did that. And so after the fast, I learned that what? God still answered me, even though those tongues, majority of them, they felt very dry. And I really struggled in during those 8 hours of praying, because I was praying for 5 days. So the first day and the second day was extremely difficult. It was only the third day that at least I had started getting into that routine of praying for long. So it was not as difficult as the first and second day. But still, at the end of the fast, God still did for me what I wanted, at even more than what I had requested. So remember that if you are going to pray in tongues for a very long time or a long stretch of time, it is normal for those tongues to feel dry. But that does not mean that God will not answer you. God will still answer you because of the sacrifice you are actually taking. Then the third thing that I learned was that your overall time of prayer will increase after you do that long stretch of time. Like after that long stretch of time praying in tongues. Because for me, before that fast, I used to pray in tongues maximum an hour and a half in a day. But what happened was that after that long fast that I did, I realized that it was easy for me to just pray in tongues for 3 hours a day. So this is something that you need to be aware of. And if you are in a position actually where you want to increase your own time of prayer, probably you are only praying for 30 minutes a day, you want it to get to like an hour a day, probably you will need to do like a day 2 or 3 where you pray in tongues for like 4 hours a day. So you stretch yourself beyond. Then after that, you will realize that you may not be able to sustain praying in tongues for 4 hours a day for very long, but you will notice that you can actually pray in tongues for like an hour a lot more easily than if you had not done that long stretch of praying before. So that is something that I learned also from that long stretch of praying in tongues. So that is like, those are the few lessons I learned from that experience, and I just felt it's important to share, just in case you're also in a position where you want to actually pray in tongues for that long. So that is it for today. God bless you.